We often talk about how Africa's biggest problem is its leadership crisis. But what if this is not the whole story? What if the real issue that we have here is also in the manner in which we worship and we revere leadership? Today, I'd really like us to consider how something that we as Africans hold dear, that being our values, the manner in which we have respect for elders, our humility, our traditions, have now been weaponized against us to keep corrupt leaders in powers. In today's episode, I really want us to dive deep into how respectability politics has now become a silent killer that continues to destroy democracy across Africa. Hello, good people, and welcome to another episode. I am so happy and excited to have you guys here with me. Y'all are welcome, y'all are loved, y'all are appreciated. And before we get into today's topic, I just wanted to share that we have officially reached 100 subscribers. That's how the kids be doing it today. Okay. So yeah, guys, with that, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who has engaged, who has shared, who has commented, who has just been a part of this family so far and has continued to take the conversation forward. It is much appreciated and it is seen. Okay, so with that, let us get into the nitty-gritty of today's conversation. You'll see from the title and the thumbnail that we are getting real today. We are shaking the table, okay? And essentially, I want to talk about respectability politics. I know we have said a lot when it comes to the leadership crisis that we have as a continent here, but I don't necessarily know, or I personally have not heard it talked about from this particular angle, and that's why I'm so excited to get into it. So if you do not know, respectability politics is when a group of people, especially a marginalized group of people, are expected to act, speak, behave in a particular or accepted manner in order for them to be able to gain social power or acceptance. But in the African context, this runs deeper. We often have narratives such as respect your elders, don't question authority, that's just not how we do things over here, or wait your turn, be used against us. And don't get me wrong, these in the right context have become values that have built amazing, strong communities. But they have also been twisted in that they have become the perfect shield to ensure that we just are not able to hold leaders accountable, right? And to better understand what I'm trying to say here, cue in case study number 1, all right? President Paul Biya, he is the current president of Cameroon, and he is the world's oldest president. Yes, ma'am, yes, sir, you heard that right. The world oldest president. I feel like the World Guinness Book Record should just, come in and give him a particular category, because something must be said about that, because this man is 91 years old. He's been in power since 1982. That is over 40 years, good people, over 4 decades, okay? And he's now just announced that he will be running for his 8th term. And it doesn't end there. No, the goodness just keeps on coming when it comes to this brother man. He said that he's going to ban his political opposition. And this is the same man who came as a second runner-up in his last elections. Clearly, he recognizes that this is a severe and serious threat to him. So he's got to just nip it in the bud while he still can. Now, I bring up this case because this is not just authoritarianism anymore. No, we've way surpassed that. This is now illustrating to us how we now have a culture whereby age, seniority, and respect override the principles of justice, fairness, and just transition. And Mr. Paul Biya is not alone in this. Across the continents, we have seen case study after case study of presidents changing the constitution, extending the retirement ages, and manipulating electoral bodies, all while still having the audacity to demand respect and patience from their constituencies. I mean, you know? And I feel like it's not just them not knowing that it's time to go, because trust me, they do. And it's not just presidents. Let me make this clear. It's not just presidents. This has trickled down to various members of parliament and high-ranking individuals within government who just refuse to let go, okay? It's not like they don't know that the clock has been ticking for a minute now. No, it's because they also understand that they have taught us to not challenge them in various ways, which will not be discussed in today's video. But then I do want us to go deeper into how tradition and traditions that we value and we hold dear and are essentially at a certain level of the core and the essence of who we are have been made to be tools of controlling us, right? Some of the things that our traditions have taught us is to value, honor, revere the wisdom of elders. And that is rightfully so. But then what if this has now been twisted into a very toxic way? And what I mean by this is in how criticism is now deemed as disrespect. Holding people accountable is now seen as rebellious. And youth leadership is only recognized as arrogance. I mean, why are we hiding behind a culture that is essentially just violating the essence of who it is that we are? Because what we are seeing here in broad daylight is the manipulation of African value systems, whereby many people have started using this whole idea of respect as a way to muzzle us and have made tradition this throne in which they seat themselves on to continue getting the power that they want for their own selfish gains. And I believe that this is why it is that young people are finding it so difficult to rise up into the ranks and really be able to effect change. It's not that we lack ideas or capacity. If anything, it's a matter of us having to wait to earn the badge of age before we are able to speak. And whilst this is happening, countries are crumbling, economies are falling, and the continent's future is really, truly stagnant. All because we want to wait for people to get to the age whereby they can have permission to speak. Yeah. This just leaves me at a loss for words, especially when you now try to compare and try and understand why it is that maybe the West has got better systems of just transitions of power, right? And this is by no means me saying that the West doesn't have its own problems, as we have seen with certain leaders. They too are corrupt. They too have their own issues there. But what I do want to bring to our attention is the fact that transitions do ultimately happen. Elections come and power does shift. And this is because of how they have built institutions that are stronger than the individuals, right? European countries have done an exceptional job in building systems that can outlive and survive leaders. And so any leader can come in and not be able to crush the system that has been long existing before the leader has come along, right? And in Africa, we see that this is kind of a difficult thing to do because of how Africa views power as a very personal thing. It's very spiritual, it's very much respected, and even in some cases it's feared, right? And so when a leader fails, instead of us being able to hold them accountable, they remain untouchable, essentially. And this is because of how their persona has so much overshadowed their position that they currently occupied. And this, my good friends, is the problem that comes when we mix respectability with governance. And when I say this, I do not at all remove it from the context of how our transition from colonization to independence left us with very fragile systems that we never really got a chance to adequately build. I say this with a full recognition of that. Do understand that, okay? And so I want us then to move on to discuss how this has impacted democracy in ways that maybe we do see and maybe we don't necessarily see. And the simple way to put it, right, is the fact that when respect becomes silence, democracy dies. Let me say that again. When respect becomes silence, democracy ultimately dies. And we see this in how these leaders have used various modes and avenues and tools of traditions to cling into power, ultimately making governance a joke. And it's really sad when you tell young people to wait in a continent that has over 60% of its young people being under the age of 25. I mean, what kind of future are we building here? Do we even foresee a future that has democracy in it? Because I certainly do not at this moment. And it's really sad. It's really, really sad because we cannot develop as a people if the very same values that we revere are used as, tools to protect the powerful instead of them being used to uplift the people. Respectability is now a political strategy. It's a way for people to appear noble without doing absolutely nothing. And it's a way for them to continue to demand loyalty whilst continuously delivering failure after failure after failure after failure. And so, good people, I really do wish that we can all come together in making a call to action for us to reimagine what leadership should look like. It's really time that we redefine leadership in Africa. It shouldn't be determined by age, by tradition, and certainly not by empty respect. It does need to include, however, integrity, vision, service, accountability, and most importantly, a recognition of when to let go. And with that, I'm not saying that we should abandon our values. Absolutely not. Our values are the essence of who we are. They make us unique. It is some of the things I love most dearly about being an African. But I am saying that we should stop allowing people to manipulate these values and have them become weapons of control that they use against us. Respect must go both ways. And tradition has to serve us, the people, not imprison us. And ultimately, I want to end with this, a question to both you and me. And that is whether you think that, respectability politics is killing democracy and is continuously making Africa fail. Because if we are honest, our problem is not just in the fact that we need new leaders because of how the current ones don't want to leave, but it's also maybe in just how we haven't done enough collectively. When I say collectively, I do mean the whole entire continent, to demand that they do go and they do leave. And so with that, good people, do make sure that you drop a comment down below, tag someone or share this with somebody who thinks that no, elders always know best, because a difference in opinion is always important in furthering the conversation and changing the narrative. And most importantly, let's make sure that this conversation is one that doesn't just shake the tables, but it flips the systems. Because at the end of the day, we don't just need new leaders. We need to also be able to reimagine a new way of leading in Africa. So with that, we are now moving to the next segment of the show, which is Women Across Africa. We are now in Women Across Africa, and normally in this segment I highlight an event or something particular that has happened involving women. But in today's episode, I want to do something different and bring awareness to the fact that in this month of July, it is Fibroid Awareness Month, and I really truly do want to highlight this because it's something that we don't talk about enough, especially amongst the Black African community. And the unfortunate reality is that we are most most impacted by it. So I just want to give a few statistics to those who may not be aware of the extent into which fibroids really affect us as Black women. The first is that fibroids are common, with 2 in 3 women developing them at some point. But Black women are more likely to develop them earlier and in greater numbers. Black women are 3 times more likely to develop fibroids compared to white women, and about half of Black women will have fibroids by age 35. 80% by age 50, which is shocking when you compare it to how it's only 70% for white women, right? If you didn't know, some of the major signs that could show that you might have fibroids is heavy menstrual bleeding, pelvic pain, frequent urination, and even in some cases fertility issues. Even though we do have this high prevalence of fibroids, I think it is also oftentimes not diagnosed early enough, or in most cases misdiagnosed, because of how we do not talk about it. And so I'm bringing this up in today's episode to say that if you are a man watching, let your woman, let your girl, let your sister, let your mom, let your friends, let your colleagues know about this, and encourage them to go and get checked. And also, if you are a woman yourself, if there's something that resonated with you in some of these symptoms that I shared, definitely go and get checked out. And as always, when it does come to medical health care, always advocate until you get the necessary care that you deserve, because as we know, when it comes to some of these issues that relate to us women, we are often misdiagnosed, or they are just not seen upon your first visit. So just know that your first visit may possibly not be your last. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to the last bit of the show, which is Woman of the Week. We are now in Woman of the Week. And as you can see, this is really always like my favorite part of the show, because it allows us to just shine a light on some goodness that is being done by women across this continent. And I think that's important because, child, the world is crazy enough as it is. So it's always great to be able to add this goodness and give an extra round of applause to somebody who is doing something that is life-changing, regardless of how big or small it is. And in this week's Woman of the Week, we are going to Uganda, and we are meeting a woman by the name of Edith Lukandwa, and she is a woman that is raising 98 children with disabilities in her Home of Hope organization. Many of these children have been abandoned by their families, and it really is because of just the cultural stigma that is associated with people with disabilities in the country of Uganda. Just want to read some stats that I saw in this article, and it says here that more than 6 million people in Uganda, a country of nearly 50 million, live with disability, and many of the people here consider disability to really be a burden due to long-lasting cultural beliefs, right? But more than that, another thing that really stood out to me is just the government's response to this, right? And that is the fact that just 1% of the country's health budget goes towards helping these families. And this is really unfortunate when you consider the fact that about 31% of households with disability live in poverty. And so for me, I just was like, the math is not mathing here. Like, as a government, your consensus is already letting you know that there's a designated number of people who require specific needs and attentions and resources and knowledge for them to be able to live in and coexist in this world. But only 1% of the health budget is allocated to that. Of course, it's going to continue to fuel cultural stigmas that exist. And that ultimately, removes people from them being able to get adequate knowledge on how it is that they can care, and effectively provide for people with disabilities, something which Judith is doing exceptionally well within her organization. And so I wanna, end off by just sharing something that, Judith had said, and that is the fact that she hopes that her work of educating people will allow for there to be greater awareness raising, so that, this issue could be more accepted by societies, because it shouldn't be a cultural stigma. And I love this so much because I'm a firm believer of the fact that as long as love and hope exist, there will always be the opportunity and possibility to create new worlds in a world that doesn't make accommodation for differences. And so I do hope that you enjoy the video that I'm about to show. Though it is a bit dated, I think it highlights amazingly well some of the great work that Edith is doing. And with that, guys, thank you so much for joining this episode. As always, don't forget the conversation doesn't end here. It continues in the comment section. So as always, like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for sitting until this very end. I truly appreciate it. I appreciate you, familia. And with that, I will see you guys very, very soon. Till then, keep well. Bye.
26-year-old Prosy was born with a condition known as hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of fluid on the brain. She is unable to help herself, and Edith Lukab has been her caretaker for the last 10 years.
Prosy was living with a grandmother. We call them Nyarandas, from Rwanda. They were from Rwanda. So by the time I used to take my son to hospital, that's where we got to know each other with the Prosy's grandmother, who was also trying to bring Prosy, and she was very old lady. Prosy was a bit heavy for her even take care of her.
Prosy is the oldest of the people with disabilities at the Home of Hope in Wachitaka Village, Jinja District. Agnes was brought here by a good Samaritan who found her abandoned by a road.
They found Agnes at the side of the road when he was wrapped in a paper bag, and where they had dumped him, they had even lighted fire, of which we thought maybe they were attempting to burn her, because it was early in the morning when the boda guy was riding over and saw something kicking. Aggie was so malnourished, very skinny. It was almost on this point, because by the time they decided maybe to abandon her, they had denied her food for a long time.
Kaka, who could be about 10, suffered from meningitis which affected his spine, and like many of the children here, he cannot sit up on his own.
He has severe cerebral palsy, he has hypertone, like he doesn't calm down, he struggles.
According to Lukab, looking after Kaka is not easy.
Because the more he grows up, the more difficult he becomes. So you find that he has not been able to walk, to like sit or do anything or calm down. It's really hard because of the situation he has, that all the time he just struggles and he doesn't calm down. He's so restless. Even at night he's very restless.
Home of Hope takes care of 56 children, most of them having been abandoned by their parents and families. They all have different disabilities which require close monitoring. NTV asked Lukab about her selflessness.
Derek fell sick. He's my firstborn. He fell sick when he was 2 days old. He started convulsing. He changed into yellow color. We struggled so much with Derek, of where even people used to say he has this is his demon possessed, this is witchcraft, but we didn't give up with my son. So by taking him to hospital, that's when we got exposed, like knowing that there are other children who were really struggling with disability, and people were like have a high stigma towards them.
As you